In the very heart of old Lviv stands a town hall that has watched over the city for more than 700 years. This is where trials were once held. This is where sentences were passed. And according to an old legend, it was here that a man named Mykhailo Boretsky was executed many centuries ago. Until his very last breath, he swore he was innocent, and before he died, he spoke words that people still remember to this day. If my blood was spilled unjustly, I will return. They say his body was placed inside a black wooden coffin and left deep in the basement of the town hall. But just a few nights later, the guards began to hear something, a sound, as if someone was knocking from inside the coffin. Sometimes, late at night, people claim they see it moving through the dark corridors of the town hall. And every time it appears, a new name shows up on its lid. They say, if you ever hear that knocking, you should never follow it, because one day, the name carved into the coffin might be yours. Lviv is an old city. Its narrow streets remember centuries of history. Here, every stone carries its own legend. But there is one story that the people of Lviv avoid mentioning at night. This is the story of the Black Coffin of Lviv Town Hall. A thick autumn fog slowly settled over Market Square. The yellow glow of lanterns reflected off the wet cobblestones, while the wind whispered between the old buildings. It was almost 11 at night when Andrei approached the heavy wooden doors of the town hall. It was his first night shift. He had only been working as a guard for a few days, but tonight he had to stay until morning. The door opened. An old caretaker stood there. A gray-haired man with deep wrinkles silently looked at him. "New here?" he asked quietly. "Yes." The old man handed him a ring of keys. "Just walk the corridors every 2 hours." Andrei nodded. He was about to step inside when the old man suddenly added, "And one more thing." Andrei stopped. "If you hear knocking on wood, don't open the door to the old courtroom." Andrei smirked. "Tourist legends?" The old man said nothing. He only stared at him for a long moment, then slowly walked down the stairs. The door closed, and the town hall was left almost completely empty. The first few hours passed quietly. The old building creaked from time to time. Somewhere in the distance, the wind hummed softly. Andrei walked the corridors with a flashlight and a radio, trying not to think about the caretaker's words. Around 3 in the morning, he sat in the small security room. Suddenly, the radio crackled, then silence, and at that exact moment, knock! Andrei Podnyogolovu. The building was quiet. He told himself it was just the old wood. But a few seconds later, knock, dull, heavy, as if someone was knocking from inside something thick. Andrei slowly stood up. The sound was coming from the corridor. He grabbed his flashlight and stepped outside. The beam of light slid across old walls, paintings, dark doors. The corridor was empty, until at the far end, he saw something. Something dark. Andrei froze. His heart began to pound. In the middle of the corridor stood a black coffin, long, old, heavy. The dark wood barely reflected the light. Andrei was certain just minutes ago there was nothing there. He took a step forward, and then, knock. He stopped breathing. The sound came from inside the coffin. A cold shiver ran down his spine. "Is someone there?" he whispered. Silence. He moved closer. The flashlight beam slid across the lid, and he saw scratches, deep marks in the wood, as if someone had once tried to claw their way out. And then a whisper came from inside. "Open." Andrei stepped back. "Who's there?" The whisper came again, soft, barely audible. "Open." His hands began to tremble. He remembered the old man's warning. Don't open the door to the old courtroom. Andrei raised the flashlight higher, and only then he noticed something else. Letters, carved into the lid. He leaned closer and felt the air leave his lungs. A name, carved into the wood. Andriy, his name, his own name. He stumbled back. This is some kind of joke, he whispered. But at that moment, the lid of the coffin moved. Just slightly. From inside came a scraping sound, like nails dragging across wood. "Help me," the voice whispered. Andriy ran. He sprinted down the corridor, barely lighting his path. Stairs, doors, the security room. He slammed the door shut and pressed himself against the wall. His heart was racing. Minutes passed. Silence. Slowly, Andriy approached the monitor. The corridor camera showed the exact place where the coffin had stood. The screen flickered, and Andriy saw nothing. The corridor was empty. No coffin. He stared at the screen for a long time. Maybe he imagined it. Maybe it was a shadow. Maybe he had fallen asleep. Finally, he exhaled and sat down. And at that exact moment, knock. Andriy slowly turned his head. Knock. The sound came from right behind the door. Slow. Heavy. As if someone was knocking from inside a wooden coffin. And then a voice whispered, "I found you." After that night, no one ever saw Andriy again. When the town hall staff arrived in the morning, they found only his flashlight and his radio. The door to the old courtroom was open, and in the dark corridor stood an old black coffin. On its lid, letters were carved. But now, there were two names. Taras froze in the middle of the corridor. The flashlight trembled in his hand, its beam sliding across the old walls of the town hall. At the end of the hallway stood the black coffin. Just like in the old stories. Heavy, dark, scratched. And the worst part, Taras was certain just minutes ago it wasn't there. He took a step back. Then, knock. From inside the coffin. Taras swallowed hard. "Who's there?" he whispered. Silence. Then, a voice. Soft, barely audible, like wind slipping through a crack. "Help me." A chill ran down his spine. He remembered how one of the older workers had tried to tell him something before his shift, but he had brushed it off. Tourist legends. Now, it didn't feel funny anymore. He raised the flashlight higher. The light fell across the lid. Scratched letters, names, two of them almost erased by time. Mykhailo Boretsky, Andriy. Taras leaned closer. And then he noticed something else. The wood was moving. New scratches were appearing, as if something inside was carving them. Right now. Taras stepped back. The letters formed slowly, one by one. T-A-R. His heart began to pound. "No," he whispered. But it didn't stop. S. Taras. At that exact moment, the coffin jerked violently. Bam! Something slammed against the lid from inside. Taras screamed and ran. His footsteps echoed loudly through the stairways of the town hall. He burst out onto Market Square, gasping for air. The night fog wrapped around the city. He stood there for minutes, trying to calm himself. Maybe it was a dream. Maybe he imagined it. Maybe, finally, he forced himself to go back inside. The corridor was empty. No coffin. Taras let out a nervous laugh. Just an old building. He returned to the security room and sat down at the desk. Minutes passed. And then, knock, from beneath the table. Taras slowly lowered his gaze. The wooden floor beneath his feet shifted, barely noticeable, as if something heavy was rising from below. And then the same voice whispered, right next to him, closer than ever, "Now, you stay with me." The next morning, the staff once again found the security room empty. Taras was gone. Only deep scratches remained on the old wooden floor, as if someone had tried to hold on while being dragged down. That same day, Mr. Roman went down to the old courtroom. He already knew what he would see. In the center of the dark room stood the black coffin, old, silent, waiting. And now, there were 3 names carved into its lid. But the most terrifying part, beneath them, new scratches were already beginning to form, slowly, carefully, as if the coffin was writing the next name. Because according to the old Lviv legend, the soul of Mykhailo Boretsky will never find peace until someone finally opens the coffin. Mr. Roman stood in the old courtroom, staring at the black coffin. The silence in the room was so thick, it felt like something you could touch. The beam of his flashlight drifted across the walls, through the dust rising from the floor, and over the dark wood of the coffin. Names were carved into the lid. Mykhailo Boretsky, Andrei, Taras. Roman slowly ran his fingers across the scratches. He had seen this before, a long time ago. Years earlier, when he had just begun working in the town hall, one of the old guards had told him the truth about the legend. Back then, Roman didn't believe it either. Not until one night, when he heard the sound. Knock. Dull. Slow. As if someone was patiently knocking from inside a wooden coffin. That night, the old guard told him one thing. Don't listen to it. To who? Young Roman had asked. The old man answered quietly. The one inside. Roman remembered those words for the rest of his life. And now, standing here, he understood. This had never been just a legend. He leaned closer, and suddenly, he noticed new scratches on the lid, fresh, as if they had been made just moments ago. His flashlight trembled. The scratches began to form a name. Slowly, letter by letter. R. Roman froze. O. He stepped back. M. The air in the room turned cold. His heart began to race. N. Roman! At that moment, a sound came from inside the coffin. At first, barely audible, like something slowly shifting in the dark. Then, knock. Roman didn't move. Another ooter. Knock. And then a voice, dry, ancient, as if rising from deep beneath the earth. You know, I am innocent. Roman closed his eyes. He had heard those words before, exactly as they were written in the old archives. The final words of Mykhailo Boretsky. The voice continued, Open, and I will leave. The lid creaked softly, as if something inside was pushing against it. Roman slowly shook his head. No. Silence. Then, bam! The coffin jolted. Dust fell from the ceiling. The voice grew louder. Open it. Another ooter. Bam! Roman Resko switched off the flashlight. Darkness swallowed the room. He knew one thing. If you don't see the coffin, sometimes it disappears. Seconds passed. Long, endless. Silence. No sound. Roman slowly turned the flashlight back on. The room was empty. The coffin was gone. He exhaled heavily and turned toward the door when he heard it, right behind him. Knock. Roman slowly turned around. In the darkness of the corridor stood the black coffin. Now it was open. The lid lay on the floor. And inside, there was only darkness. Deep, endless. And from that darkness, the voice came again. Soft, almost gentle. Now, it's your turn. The next morning, the staff found the old courtroom open. Mr. Roman was gone, as if he had never existed. And in the center of the room stood the black coffin. Closed. Silent. Waiting. Now, there were 4 names carved into its lid. But the most terrifying part, beneath them, new scratches were already beginning to appear. Because, as the old Lviv guards say, sometimes, late at night, you can still hear it in the town hall. A dull, slow, patient knocking. Knock. Knock. And it waits for someone to finally open it. After Mr. Roman's disappearance, people in the town hall began to talk. Officially, no one mentioned the black coffin. In the reports, there was only a simple line: employee missing under unknown circumstances. But those who had worked in the building for years knew the truth. The older guards began to whisper among themselves. They spoke of a story passed down for decades, the legend of Mykhailo Boretsky. They say that after his execution, his body was placed in a black coffin and left in the basement of the town hall. But at night, the guards began to hear a sound: dull, slow, knock, as if someone was knocking from inside the coffin. At first, no one paid attention, until one night, the coffin appeared in the corridor, as if something had carried it up from the basement. After that, it was locked inside the old courtroom, and for a long time, nothing happened, until the guards began to disappear. One, many years ago, then another, and each time, a new name appeared on the lid of the coffin. That is why the older workers always feared the night shifts, especially around 3 in the morning, because that is when the sound was heard most often. A few weeks after Roman disappeared, a new guard arrived. His name was Ole. Young, calm, a newcomer to Lviv. He knew nothing about the legend. To him, this was just an old building. His first night shift was quiet. He walked the corridors, checked the doors, and sometimes looked out the windows at the silent market square. The city was asleep. Fog drifted slowly through the streets. It was almost 3 in the morning when he heard it. At first, just a faint creak, like old wood shifting somewhere in the building. Then, knock. Ole stopped. The beam of his flashlight slid along the walls. No one, but the sound was clear, and it was coming from ahead. He moved slowly down the corridor, and then he saw it, at the far end. The black coffin, dark, old, its lid covered in scratches. Ole frowned. "Who put this here?" He stepped closer. There were names carved into the wood. 4 of them: Mykhailo Boretsky, Andrei, Taras, Roman. Ole leaned in, and then, knock, from inside. He stepped back. The lid shifted slightly. From the darkness within, a whisper emerged. "Finally!" Ole froze. The voice was quiet, but unmistakably clear. "Open, and I will tell you the truth." Ole let out a nervous laugh. "Who's there? Is this a joke?" In response, a scraping sound, like nails dragging across wood. Then the voice whispered, "They killed me." The corridor grew colder. Ole's flashlight trembled. "I am not guilty." The lid of the coffin slowly lifted just a few centimeters, and the darkness inside deepened, as if there was no bottom. The voice grew slightly louder. "Open, and I will show you." Ole took a step back, but at that moment, new scratches began to appear on the lid, slowly, letter by letter. "O." Ole felt the blood drain from his face. "L." He turned sharply and ran. Behind him, knock, and a whisper followed him through the dark. "You have heard me." A pause. Then, soft, certain. "You are part of the legend now." A few days later, the town hall staff gathered once again. The new guard, Ole, had vanished without a trace. No one heard footsteps. No one saw him leave the building. In the security room, they found only his flashlight and an old archive book lying open on the desk. Mr. Roman had once shown it to only a few people. Inside were records of strange events in the town hall. Disappearing guards, names, so many names. When the workers turned to the last page, they saw a new entry, fresh, as if it had been written that very night. It read, "Mykhailo Boretsky, 1642. Andriy, 1998. Taras, 2007 Roman, 2021. Ole, 2026. One of the workers let out a nervous laugh. Someone's messing with us. But the old archivist slowly shook his head. He knew one thing. These entries appear on their own. Sometimes, late at night in the old courtroom, you can still hear it. A dull, slow, patient sound. Knock, knock. As if someone is waiting inside a wooden coffin. Waiting because, according to the old legend of Lviv, one day, someone will finally open it